hi to everyone again. I'm still in my dining room in London and travel is still canceled. But week by week, we're seeing a lot more things to be hopeful about, and I hope that continues. I was talking to Ellen from Afar, who's on this call, and I told her I felt like this is putting together the perfect dinner party. Or if any of you have ever been to her apartment on Central Park in New York, like an Ellen cocktail party. So these are the conversations that we'd be having if we were sitting around a dinner table together, and we all have different perspectives, we're at different stages, and we're gonna have different outcomes. Last week we had Mei Zhang from Wild China on, and I so value her opinion, and they're a few months ahead of us, and she was so positive. And we had some of the bigger companies on last week, like United Airlines and Silversea. And so this week we decided to focus on all international voices, that is beyond the US, and with smaller, not small, luxury brands. And, you know, we're closed off and we might all have Zoom headaches, but we're opening up the world here. So I really believe this is our biggest crisis, but it's also our biggest opportunity. So I will introduce our panel now, and I'm going to start with our time zone winner, Anthony Goldman, the Joint Managing Director of the Goldman Group in Australia, because it is 2 a.m. where he is. 2 a.m. That is the power of showing up. And the next time zone winner, where it is midnight, James McBride, partner and CEO of Nehi Hotels, and he is at Nehi Sumba right now in Indonesia. Hi, James.
Hi, how are you, Annie? Thank you.
And the rest are awake when they should be, I believe. So we have Jan Newmark, the owner of Viajan Turismo, a very high-end agency in Brazil. And we have—
Hi, Annie. How are you?
We have Luke Bales, the founder and CEO of Singita, who is in Cape Town right now. We have—
Hi, Annie.
Hi. We have Andrea Grisdale, the CEO and founder of IC Bellagio, who is on Lake Como in Italy.
Buonasera, Annie.
How are you?
Great, thank you.
And then we have Ellen Asmodeo, our Executive VP and Chief Revenue Officer at Afar, who is in New York City.
Everyone.
So I'm going to open with Ellen, actually, because she has some great thoughts on what deglobalization would mean for the world, because it looks like we're looking at that for a period of time. None of us know, of course, everything is speculation. So Ellen, I kind of wanted to open with you and see what you thought about that.
Thanks, Annie. First of all, I would love to have this dinner party in my apartment, so maybe we can make that happen eventually when we're all able to go out. And you know, really, who thought that at this point we would still have uncertainty in when we can travel, where we can travel, and how we can. So, you know, when Annie talks about deglobalization, it's really about, to me, it's when and how we can travel and what that will look like. Will we have health restrictions, protocols? What types of airlift will be available? There are so many questions, but the factor that I know that will suffer greatly is that among all of this, the human connection will certainly be less. We will have, for at least a period of time, the ability to, you know, touch less humans, whether it's in a hotel room, an airline, even a kiosk at an airport, that the human connection will be lost. And certainly with less travel, the human connection will be lost. And we at Afar, like many of you on this call, really believe in the power of travel and travel as a force for good. So, you know, without human connection, we have less empathy and really will suffer from that. So my hope is that throughout this process that we can continue to connect with the world, help humanity. I mean, 1 in 10 jobs in the globe, around the globe, are in our beloved industries. So we must continue to figure out the solutions and work together as partners, trying to inspire and guide travelers to have these experiences that help the world. And I've seen so many statistics, like many of you were reading things all day long to gauge what travelers are doing and what brands and you know, the travel industry is doing to connect with travelers. And we see week by week that the percentages are going up in terms of travelers wanting to travel even more, going further afield. And each week we see that being shifted to a positive reaction. The advisors I speak to are booking more travel now in terms of what's possible. So that's also very hopeful. And I know on Afar.com, we had for the first time 3 articles rank in the top 10 for most read that are non-coronavirus related. And no surprise, 12 cocktails around the globe was in one of those three, but also best hotels and best cities. So these are good indicators that travelers are ready to listen to where they can go. And certainly this is an opportunity for all of us. And I believe that, you know, internationally, we need to be listening to each other. So I'm so grateful to have everyone here today and to be part of this conversation. So thank you all for joining us. And I'm
I haven't
really
read that
interested
cocktail
in what
story.
everyone has to
I have to read that cocktail. The story I read in Afar yesterday, which was incredible, was about what travelers can do to save the planet, which came out in honor of Earth Day. So I really love that story.
And just to speak about that for a second, with Earth Day yesterday, we did something really creative with Hurtigruten, the cruise line, where they did a quiz for our audience. And I thought that was, you know, a really creative way to align with Earth Day and to really talk about sustainability.
And speak to the audience. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So first, I mean, because we have so many international voices, I'd like to start by asking everyone to kind of go around and tell us what's happening in your country, what the lockdowns currently look like, status, and what the governments are doing, if you know. And I'd love to start with you, Andrea, in Italy.
Okay, thank you so much, Annie. I would say we're in a very good time right now. We are coming to the end of the current lockdown, which is due to end on the 3rd of May. I can tell you that in the last 2 weeks, we have seen many more small businesses reopening. You know, the car mechanics, for example, now our restaurants, our gelaterias, our pastry shops, our bread stores, they're all doing home deliveries. There's a lot of hope around. People are having conversation about what's going to happen in phase 2. We are getting ready, for example, to reopen our office, and what does that look like and what is needed. So there's definitely this huge feeling of opportunity, a feeling of there is a light at the end of this tunnel, and we're getting very, very close to it. I can also tell you, Annie, that speaking to the team earlier, we have had an average of 3 new requests per day for the last 6 working days, which is absolutely fantastic. And this is for people intending to travel in the fall of this year and in 2021.
Wow, that's really good to hear. And with the pastry shops and bakeries, they weren't doing that before, and now they are?
No, they were not doing that before, but now they can open for home deliveries. So it's just one step in the right direction. And already, I was just on the phone earlier with the local province, and they're working on, you know, new communication initiatives to get the word out that Lake Como is back open, for example. That's where I'm based. I was speaking to one of the news crew that we actually work with, that we've been giving a hand to, and it's an international news crew. They're actually leaving Italy on Saturday, which is good news, I think, because they're taking the spotlight off us a bit. So it's all looking very positive, and there's a good feeling amongst us. You know, we have virtual aperitivi between friends, between families, between colleagues. We're constantly in touch. We're having international bake-offs and sharing recipes, and there's just a really, really good feeling here right now.
That's good. I mean, that really does mean a lot, right? Because it was not like that a few weeks ago.
Totally.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I just heard just north of you in Switzerland, which is opening up soon as well, that there are waiting lists at the hairdressers. So, okay, Jan, in Brazil, you own this amazing agency. Your people want to travel. I'll ask you about that a little bit later. But what is the lockdown like where you are?
We are almost 40 days in our lockdown, and there is a kind of political crisis because the president wants the verticalization of the lockdown, and the governors, they want to make it more strict. So people doesn't know exactly who they have to hear, but I am very positive. I believe next week they will reevaluate everything, so they might start opening in the next, I don't know, 10 days. At this moment, we are all in lockdown. You cannot go in and out. There is some restaurants are open for deliveries, and that's all.
Can you
Supermarkets and
go to the grocery store, and do you need a note, or can you just go?
no, you can go to grocery stores. The big ones, they have a restriction of how many people they can go in together on the store,
Yeah.
and that's all.
Okay, so you're still kind of waiting to hear what the next step is for lifting restrictions.
Yeah.
James, you're on an island.
Yeah,
Sorry. There's a little bit of a delay. Sorry, we're all over the world. James, you are on an island. So what is your lockdown? I mean, for Indonesia, what is the lockdown right now?
Just for edification. So Sumba is an hour east of Bali. Sumba's 2.5 times bigger than Bali. It's the size of Jamaica, and it's the only resort on the island, just to put it in context. So Sumba, I think the crazy thing with Sumba is, given that it's sort of 50, 60 years behind the rest of the world, it's animist, it's tribal, it's wild, with the most incredible people. The way that the people in the island have adjusted is quite extraordinary. You can, I go hiking most mornings, and you can hike down a road where there's no one, and there's a bamboo boom with people, and you have to wash your hands. And it's absolutely fascinating and heartwarming and extraordinary. There's no other way to put it. Because I think the fear of, as people have made more money, let's say they were making $50 a month 6 years ago, they're making $500-600 a month now. They've got cell phones, they've got internet, and their worlds have changed, and they're more educated to see what's going on in the rest of the world. I think the interesting phenomenon on Bali and Indonesia, just the size, the 4th biggest country in the world, it is a very unknown factor as to what's going on in Java. Java is one of the most populated islands. And it is on lockdown, but it is, I wouldn't say exactly that stringent. The Hajj is coming up next week, and there's been a lot of deliberation about the ban of people being able to go back to their villages, because if they do go back to their villages, the spread could be extremely rife. So I think that's going to get locked down, which would be a really big thing. But I think the most interesting phenomenon, for lack of a better word, is probably Bali. Bali was the #1 destination for Chinese travelers. Christmas was full. People from all over the world, and there is very little trace of COVID-19 in Bali. There've been a few deaths, and people have gone to visit the crematoriums, have gone to the morgues, have gone to the hospitals to witness, because if it's not reported correctly, that is the way to go and see, is to go and actually test and view yourself if things are overcrowded, and have there been more deaths recorded, and they haven't, which is really terrific news, unless a major wave is going to come, which it certainly could down the road. But for now, it's really, really positive, and let's hope it stays that way, because Bali is still a hub. To come to us, you have to come through Bali. Bali to the world, most people think Bali is a brand, Bali is a country. Most people don't think it's even a part of Indonesia, as Phuket's not a part of Thailand. That's just the way it is. So I hope it remains that way, and I think that's very positive.
Yeah, definitely. And how many people live on Sumba?
550,000.
550,000. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I did not know a lot of that. Luke, what is it like in South Africa?
So I'm in Cape Town at our house, and the lockdown here has been very draconian. It's so bad we can't go for a walk, we can't go for a run. We've been in lockdown now for almost 5 weeks.
Wow.
And at this point in time, we have, I think it's 3,600 positive cases in South Africa, and only 65 deaths. So they're doing well there. The World Health Organization just today singled out and praised South Africa for their firm and proactive response. And I think the biggest problem for us is really post this, because the economy is really being hammered. And, in fact, tonight the president makes another announcement. And you know, we were a little behind Europe, but it has, as I say, been controlled very, very well thus far.
Yeah, there's some big success stories in Africa, like in Rwanda, and with contact tracing and testing, and I guess partly because they've dealt with things like this before, just like in Asia, and maybe better prepared for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anthony, in Australia, what is it? Is it a strict lockdown? Or are you allowed to go out?
Yeah, so we have more of a shutdown. So we're allowed to go out. You're allowed to go out to the parks just with your family members that live with you. If you can go with one other person, so you see a lot of twos walking in the park. So we're heading to winter at the moment as well. I mean, it's a mild winter in Australia, but essentially restaurants are closed, bars are closed, but we still have some shops that are open. Supermarkets are open. They call it essential services, are mostly open. We have really only less than 2,000 active cases of coronavirus now in Australia. We've
Wow.
had about 5,500 cases. So we have managed to contain it very well. Our big island with a small community, we are very well behaved, and you know, we've all been at home and the schools are closed. They're talking about reopening schools in about 3 weeks, and slowly starting to allow larger gatherings of people. So we're going to see some normality resume in the next few weeks in Australia, which is wonderful.
It sounds similar to the UK, where current shelter-in-place rules go on till May 11th, and then they're going to decide. But I would bet that the schools will open at the beginning of June. But we'll see.
Yeah, sure.
And Luke, I did want to quickly just go back to you for a second, because, you know, a lot of revenue, obviously, for all of us comes from traveling, and all of our businesses, there's a purpose. And especially there, you know, the income of travelers matters so much to certain efforts. Can you talk a little bit about how it's impacting the anti-poaching efforts?
Sorry about that. With pleasure. You know, our entire purpose really is about protecting and preserving large tracts of wilderness for the benefit of future generations. And so everything we do falls behind our purpose. And, you know, this has been so brutal. All of our lodges have been closed. And, you know, we have real problems out there with poaching and the like. And so we have taken a firm decision to continue all of that. And, you know, there are sort of two sides to this. The first is we've actually seen a rise in poaching on some of our properties, and on others we've seen a drop-off in poaching. Some people think that might be linked to the ban on wildlife products in various countries in Asia. And I'm hoping that's true. And of course, there is speculation that coronavirus originated from eating wild meat. So, you know, that really is in the back of our minds. And yeah, we are as committed. We have to be. We work so hard on this particular thing for so long now. And of course, a lot of the communities around us are very dependent on us as well. And you must probably know about some of the very significant projects that we are involved with. You know, feeding schemes and early childhood development and e-learning centers and culinary schools and environmental education schools and the like. So it's a lot to keep going, but we're soldering on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just reading about how the next big crisis will be the food crisis all over the world. So, I think the BBC called it biblical famines that are likely to happen in the next few months. So, I mean, that kind of plays into what you're doing. And I mean, similarly, James, you know, like you mentioned, these people that weren't making much at all did make much more money, right? Having tourism as a job. I mean, what's happening with those people? Is there government support at all, or is it?
No. It's very limited. So we have close to probably 400 employees, and take care of probably around about 20,000 of the ancillary around in West Sumba. But just winding the clock back a little bit, we're very focused on Corona and COVID, but malaria has been the biggest bane in this part of the world, of where through the Sumba Foundation was started 12-14 years ago. We've been able to almost eradicate malaria. 2 out of 4 children used to die. That's been virtually eradicated, and all of that work has had to continue. So you've got a lot of employees. We've retained all of our employees. They are all still getting compensated 50% of what they made. We've kept every single person around the world. But there are obviously many others who are not involved in the Sumba, who we have put a fundraise together where we've raised Chris Birch very kindly has put $200,000 in, and we're working on matching that. It raised probably another 150. So we had 350 to provide rice, care packages, and for everyone in the area who are really, really suffering. There's also been another very big problem of rain. This is the rainy season, and where it used to always rain in January and February and March, and that's when the rice plantations, people were able to at least have one harvest of rice, which is also gone this year as the rain is more fragmented throughout the year. And so there's no rice. There's to your point, a food shortage. And we're doing a lot of work in all of those areas, in feeding and medication, and looking after the population and the people in our area as much as possible.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's
which is probably actually which will be the same for Luke of the repeat guest factor. The traveler today who they want to have a luxury experience, but they want to grow and they want to learn and they want to contribute and they want their children to contribute. They want their children to be a part of something. So if they do donate 20,000 to put a well in, they want to go back and see the well next year. And that factor of people coming back and being a part of something that is greater than just going on a holiday, to me, is been one of our most powerful forces, and is going to continue to only get greater and greater.
Absolutely. And we just had a question come through related to airlift, right? And I think that, that's really kind of the tipping point, right? Because that actually leads me into asking you, Jan, because when we talked, you have such an interesting business because you have a private Instagram. You're pretty much word of mouth only, right? And you handle business and bookings for like the top families in Brazil. But you were saying that, a lot of them have second homes, right? They're lucky to have second homes in Brazil and they want to travel again. So, talking about when, what are you seeing from your high-end Brazil clients? And, is airlift what's going to be the tipping point to get them on the road again?
Yeah, I believe so. We have to see when the airlines will start flying again, and we have to see the other end as well. So that's why trust is so important right now. So I can, speak with James and say, how is the situation in Sumba? Can we go in? Can we fly into Bali and not have to quarantine there? So this is I think the most important things where our clients are looking to, if they can travel. So right now it's very important to know when and how. How, I think, it won't change a lot, especially on first class and business class. The configuration of the planes are already protecting the passengers. So I believe it will be safe to fly on those classes. Coach, it will be a little different. They will have to rearrange it, but
yeah,
I believe we have to see when it's going to open again, when they start to fly.
Yeah, I heard like Lufthansa, for example, they make a plan every 2 weeks for the next 4 weeks, right? And they're actually in a good position as a well-managed German airline. But they're looking at really September for international and then late summer for domestic. So you hear all different things, and again, no one knows. But I do think that will be the tipping point. And then Anthony, you've had that agency, the family agency, right? Your dad started it how many years ago now? 40 40
yeah,
years?
37,
Yeah.
Yeah, about 40, yeah.
40, I mean, that's a long time, and you've, of course, been through a lot during those time periods. But what are, high-end Australian travelers thinking?
So obviously I agree with Jan. I mean, we're going to have to see what airlift is like, and especially from Australia. Since we're so far away, we're going to be relying on the airlines to basically dictate where we can go as well. The government here is talking about the initiation of a travel bubble for Australia to incorporate New Zealand. I'm hopeful that that bubble will then expand to places like Fiji and also some parts of Southeast Asia. So I think our strategy will be in line with...
Sumba, put the bubble. Bring the bubble.
Yeah, we need the bubble. We do need the bubble. I'll make sure it extends to Sumba. But it's it really is around. I think for us in Australia, in the premium to luxury segment, I think that segment will rebound quicker than any other segment because these travellers are very resilient. They're well travelled and educated, so they will understand the situation in terms of infection rates, in terms of hygiene, in terms of things like that. So I've shifted our thinking here at Goldman Group from crisis to opportunity. And I think that's really important for people to think in that way. People will travel. It's in terms of Australians and likewise other nationalities, it is such an important fabric of culture. So we're very optimistic about the rebound. It's going to happen slowly. It's not going to turn on like a tap. We are realistic, but really it's about embracing government policy, working with government where we can to understand, how quickly we can be open for business.
Yeah.
But our clients are craving travel. I mean, the amount of emails, we're seeing the green sprouts, we're seeing forward bookings for 2021. We're planning itineraries, we're planning the 50th birthdays, the 60th birthdays, the multi-gen stuff. It's just a matter of when. It really is.
Something you mentioned to me when we talked was that return to the bucket list mentality, right? That, if you were holding on Africa, maybe you won't now. I mean, and you're seeing that as well.
Yeah, I think, I'm where my headspace is at is that people are now going to really have a look at their wonder lists, have a look at their bucket lists and say, where have I always wanted to take the family? So the likes of, Luke's business, the likes of James' business, parts of Italy, for Andrea, people are going to want to explore and they're going to want these really authentic experiences because, maybe who knows what's next. Maybe this is a big wake-up call, but I think people are going to tick off these experiences they've been holding off on quite quickly. Yeah.
Well, Andrea, I mean, you're in an amazing position on one hand, right? Because no one has to wonder what Italy is, right? Everyone has a connection to Italy, or a lot of people have a connection to Italy in some way, or a dream to visit Italy. And then maybe you'll get travelers from the rest of Europe on trains, right? We don't know that yet, what that's going to look like. But what are you thinking about when it comes to is there going to be more timed entry at sites? Is there going to be, kind of limited this number of people at the Coliseum and those kinds of things?
Absolutely, Annie. I think this is an amazing opportunity. Obviously, just 2-3 months ago, we were talking about overcrowding, and all of our strategy was all around overcrowding and how we look at that as an opportunity. And obviously, when our travelers do return, there is no way that the Vatican Museum, Sistine Chapel, the Uffizi Gallery, all of those places where people are usually squashed inside, that cannot happen anymore. So from an overcrowding point of view, I think this is an incredible opportunity. And as you know, if we're going to have less people, it will probably mean that the prices will raise up. But the majority of the clients of the panel, of the people on the panel today, I don't think, honestly, that will be a problem for them. I think they will be happy to pay the extra and have much less people in this space. Also, Annie, I do think if our clients are able to travel in September and October, November, December, as we are predicting, you know, airlift and everything else dependent, of course, you know, when else can you come to Italy at that time, especially in September, which is still high season for us, and not have to deal with the crowds? You know, it's just opportunity, 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 I think, for us. And of course, every single person on this panel today, we're all restarting. It's like a new start, a rebirth, with all of the experience that we've had over all of the years on our shoulders. So it can only be a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of leads into my next question about how we've talked so much about sustainability and over tourism, like you were saying. You know, there's been talk about this being a transition, right, into a more sustainable way of traveling rather than recovery.
Sure.
At the same time, people have short memory, you know, as soon as things go back to normal, they might forget what it was like, right? And, you know, I mean, I recently worked on a podcast with ILTM that shows that luxury travel in particular holds up 170 million jobs around the world, right? So those two things, you know, are kind of at play here. You know, how do we figure out that balance between that? And I mean, maybe this is a good question for you, Jan and Anthony. I mean, have your clients, I mean, they probably always wanted to be kind of away from people in a way, right? And then, you know, have these cultural connection moments as well. But I mean, no one wants to be in the Coliseum in the middle of July with 5 million people around them.
Yeah, this has always been my core business. Remote places, active places like Africa, like Lihi. And I think it's very updated. My clients, they want to travel to this type of places where you don't have to deal with the crowds. So I believe the travels for big cities will come back, but I think they will begin in this type of places.
Yeah.
More remote, more exclusive, where you don't have to deal with so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And Anthony, do you think that as well?
Yeah, there might be more of an opportunity. I mean, we do already, you know, do a lot in private guiding, private touring. But I really believe that the focus on mindfulness and travel may increase a little bit in the short term. I'm not so optimistic that the long term of the human race will remain for the good of everyone. I think we might rebound a little bit and go back to our old ways a little bit. But I even heard that Milan, I was reading Milan and working on a plan to actually make some streets pedestrian thoroughfares. And really that just goes to the overcrowding story and I suppose the decluttering of these cities that, as Andrea said, I mean, it'd be a privilege to travel in Italy after this in the short term. I'll be one of the first just to go and have a look at these places with less people everywhere. But the irony is some of the most beautiful pictures we've seen in the last few weeks have been empty cities. We just want to fill them again and still make them beautiful.
Yeah, there's a balance there, right? It's the millions of people versus kind of the weird post-apocalyptic, like empty look.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, then the number one question that we always get on these panels is about safety and about, you know, will the vaccine be the tipping point? I mean, I just heard the New York Times, the daily podcast today, saying that the shortest time that it ever took a vaccine was 4 years. You know, again, no one knows. I don't personally think a vaccine will be the tipping point because for a lot of reasons, but, you know, Luke, when we talked, you talked about how, you know, your Singita, obviously it's low impact, high value. It's in the open spaces, you know. Can you talk a little about how you're thinking about safety moving forward?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, we are in the midst of thousands and thousands of acres. And so I think we are different, as is James, to many others. Most of our activities are outdoors. We have warm sunshine, we eat outside, we have open vehicles, and our lodges have very low densities. And so, we are working on safety measures, and we will self-regulate. We're working very hard on this. But we do think also that travel will change forever. Cleanliness is definitely going to become one of the major factors in deciding where to go for a long time to come. I remember hearing just the other day from a friend of mine who said, survivors from World War II to the end of their lives would eat the crust on cheese. And that comes from, something that obviously had a profound impact on their lives.
Yeah.
So, I think we are very well set up for the new world, and I think it is going to be a very different world.
Yeah, so definitely hand washing continues. 20 seconds.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And people won't forget it for a long time, that's for sure.
No, but not this kind of situation. James, you not only, of course, have Nahisumba, but you have projects in Central America as well. When you're working on those new projects, is safety kind of at the forefront, or are you thinking about it differently now?
No, it's safety. To Luke's point, I think fundamentally it's all about cleanliness, and it's letting the consumer choose how much they want to engage or disengage. And I think the greatest luxury is going to be if you've got space. People love people, and people love privacy. And when you have the ability to have both under one roof, I think that's what true, I hate the word luxury, but the true experiential luxury is going to be, where you can choose. You want to stay in your villa, you want to stay in your room, you want to go to the restaurant, you want to meet people from all over the world. It's choice. And I think choice has always been a vital part of experience, but it's going to become bigger and bigger. And I think that this type of travel needs so much, specifically, as Luke said, because of the size of it. The positivity of not that there is always positive. People learn of Corona. Where people would get upset tummy when they came here, maybe because of cleanliness from some people in the village, where everyone has been taught to wash their hands, there are tanks everywhere, and you sort of elevated the education process of everyone along the way. That it's just improved dramatically. It could have taken 20 years to get where we've got in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds, but that's what it's done.
So interesting. Yeah. And I mean, do you think, okay, so let's say all of us, the whole world figures out a way that, cleanliness standards, a way of testing, all of that. Do you guys still think, maybe I'll start with you, Jan. I mean, do you think there'll still be a fear in travelers that we're going to have to fight?
Yeah, I believe, especially in the beginning, people will be afraid to travel. So they have to know exactly where they are going to. If they are going to Nihi, I will call James and he will tell me who is picking up them at the airport, where this person, if this person on his village has the virus or not. So we will have to give much more importance to connections, and to people as well. So trust, we will have to have our, people that we trust everywhere in the world. So we have to know.
I mean, you also mentioned too, when we talked, which I thought was so interesting, and I hadn't thought about that, is some of your clients were asking about the newer airlines, right, that have kind of the recyclable or the renewable air systems.
Yeah, the new planes, they recycle much more quicker there. So you have to choose which plane you are flying and how the configuration of the seats. So if you are traveling by yourself, you choose a more exclusive seat where you don't touch anybody and you are more far from people. So
Definitely.
this will be much more and more important.
And Anthony, do you think, will you travel when everything opens up, and do you think that'll be a factor in getting your client to travel again, seeing you on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I've already got my suitcase packed. I think it's like a pregnancy bag. When you're pregnant, you keep your luggage at the door to go to the hospital. I've already got my luggage packed at the door. I actually think what Jan is saying is spot on. And I think the good news is for all the travel advisors on the call, our role as travel advisors will be critical in this. Trust is such an important element, and you can't really get on the phone with an online booking engine and ask all these questions. So I think travel advisors are going to be very well prepared and very well positioned for the recovery, because clients will want to have these conversations, these real conversations about hygiene, about the history of the place that they're staying at. So I think that's the good news. So we're going to need a lot of information. And I think, we're going to have to travel again. I mean, it's part of our DNA as a people in the industry, and clients are going to want to see that we're traveling. So that's the good news. So we'll have to get on these aeroplanes and quickly figure out what's happening around the world.
I would like to say that it's now 2:43 in the morning for you, and you look great. So
Thank you so much. Yeah, bit of makeup. Thank you.
So to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to start with James on this one, because I've had quite a few conversations about this with people over the last week or two about how the travel industry will change. And in particular, you guys are all small business owners with likely less cash flow than last year. Just kind of the question, we've all banked on seeing each other a few times a year at events. Does it feel like it's too much now? Too many events? Will you cut down? What matters kind of most to you? Social media, Zoom calls? How are you looking at that moving forward, James?
So I think, just to get on what Jan and Anthony said, once a travel advisor comes to Sumba, for example, the force that goes on and the bookings come. So the power of visitation and actually experiencing the product here is vital, and the power of the travel advisor is essential. Again, going into this extraordinary period, I think everyone's at a time to break down their business and look at the various line items in the P&L. And we've all come off, this January, we all were probably in the same boat, sort of 20% of 19 going to have the best year in the history of the business. And in that time, all of these costs just get hidden everywhere, because revenue hides all sins, and you just keep on going. And when you really break it down, and I think instinctively, if I look at budgets of people going to 3, 4, 5 travel shows, you're going to Miami, then you're going to Vegas, then you're going to London, then you're going to Berlin, then you're going to Australia. And I have to say, I do ask myself, how many times do you need to see the same person in a year? And I think some people seeing their friends more than they're seeing their family. And I think that sort of the trade show involvement has become excessive. And I think that naturally COVID-19 is going to change the dynamic of that completely. Social media for me has always been very important. Social media is probably one of our biggest factors that's helped us to be successful in bringing our product to the world. But I think the analysis of what's really important for us, Pure in Marrakesh is important, Las Vegas is important, and the new show that's just started in Bali. Those are where they're very, very specific. They are pointed for the consumer that we have, and going to all of these other shows, I think, is just a little bit of a boondoggle that the business has allowed, because there was revenue that could pay for it, and people could just go and see each other and of course do business. I'm not saying business wasn't done, but I think it is definitely going to change for the better.
And Andrea, how do you feel about that? Because again, you're well known within the industry, and how much do events help you, and how do you feel moving forward?
Well, Annie, we've made a huge effort to be extremely positive and extremely transparent and very communicative from day one of this situation. We host 3 nights a week with individual agencies, virtual aperitivi via Zoom. We also have coffee catch-up at 5 p.m. Italian time. We have Instagram live interviews every week with various personalities, just really keeping that dream of Italy alive. I think so many of our travelers, they have this emotional connection with Italy, and it's our job to bring that to them and to keep them thinking and dreaming of Italy. Also, one thing that we are doing is we've looked at our gift budget, which was pretty scary looking back. And we've made a big decision that, monetary gifts are out the window. Our gifts to our travelers and our travel advisors are now going to be all about our gift of time and our gift of creativity. But also we've been hosting a lot of educational webinars, a lot of educational podcasts for our travel advisors and our travelers, being very, very active on social media. But something that's really given us a lot of great feedback is quite simply a very personalized catch-up email. I just want to check in with you. How are you doing? We've been thinking about you. Oh, by the way, let me send you a recipe for something very nice, an Italian dish. Just really be keeping it very, very personable. And guess what? These are all things that don't cost us a penny. So I think, again, we have more opportunities here than perhaps we had time in the past to even think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you sent me that photo of you with your 3 dogs and you're eating pizza overlooking Lake Como, that's amazing connection. Yeah. It also makes you, of course, dream of Italy.
Yeah.
But Luke, how do you feel about that? Do you think would you join a Zoom event with with industry people, or are you going to look even more closely at events moving forward?
Yeah, most certainly we would join a Zoom conference. We cut back on trade shows markedly about 3 years ago. And that is because, they are expensive and often extravagant, and we are strong advocates of sustainability. And the extravagance in some trade shows was frankly off-putting to me. We felt our returns didn't justify the cost and investment, not to mention carbon emissions. And one-on-one meetings certainly are more beneficial to us. And like James, we believe in fam trips. And Anthony, I think we had people from you on a few recent fam trips, and they are the best return on investment for us by far.
Yes.
We insist that people come to us and to us only, and they spend time and really get to understand the products well. Digital marketing has been a godsend to us over recent times, and so is social media. And we feel that marketing is going to become even more strategic and important in the future. So, it's all about quality and not quantity for us. Technology also, of course, is going to become increasingly important.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I was telling Andrea this too. Someone I maybe saw once a year for 5 minutes, but now I feel like I've talked to you like once a week for half an hour each time, right? I think that's definitely something. Yeah. Also, I hope that doesn't go away as we move forward. We have so many questions coming in, and I don't have time for them, but I did want to ask a couple. Does anyone have insight on honeymoons? Of course, weddings worldwide have been canceled, which led to honeymoons being postponed. Do you guys feel, Jan and Anthony, and maybe Andrea, because Italy's so honeymoon centric, do you think we're talking about 2021?
Yeah, people keep planning, and for 2021, they right now they are planning, but they don't have, the dates are flexible. They who had booked the honeymoons, they are keeping the dates for 2021, but the flexible cancellation policies are being very important. So yeah, they keep planning, but they are on hold in certain way.
Guys, no one's getting married after being in isolation for 5 weeks. This The honeymoon business is going to tank over the next year.
You all saw the divorce line in China right after their restrictions lifted. Andrea, do you think the same thing? I mean, is it people, of course, want to get married in Italy or go on honeymoon, but it's, again, timing.
Absolutely, without a doubt. It's kind of, again, there's this connection, and we keep getting emails. I am coming to Italy the minute the flights, and everything opens up. I mean, people are determined to get here, and just checking in with us also, quite often. Send me a photo, tell me about this. Oh, how's the hotel doing? Again, it's all back to that human and very much emotional connection when we are talking Italy.
Yeah. We did have a question about kind of the age group of travelers that maybe we've mentioned on the panel, products directed towards baby boomers, but are millennials booking trips as well? And I think oftentimes it's not really about age, right? But it's about ability to pay for that. Anthony, what do you think about that? Is the age thing and something you're hearing, or is it?
No, I haven't heard anything around age. I do think that booking windows will shorten, obviously. So as the world reopens, obviously the short lead time bookings will increase dramatically. I think what will be important to the younger set, and actually all travellers moving forward, will be cancellation policies. So I think suppliers and hotels and everyone will have to look at what are the cancellation policies, because if you're booking short term, obviously there's no 90-day window or a 60-day window. But I think people are going to be very wary. I mean, personally, as an agency, we're having a look at redoing all our terms and conditions, all our fee structures, all our cancellation policies, because ultimately people are going to ask, can I get my money back if I pay 30 days in advance? Because they don't want to be burnt. And some people have been burnt. Some clients have been burnt. But, we're managing through that. So I think it will change and shift the way we do business.
I have a few questions here about, will places like Iran, Jan, maybe you're the best person to speak to this. Places like Iran, where of course if we can go, are they going to be more interesting to people?
Yeah, I think particularly Iran today is a problem, but this is for sure places that everybody always wanted to go, and now when things settle down, because Iran it's one of the highest infection countries. So when things settle down, they will search for this type of places.
Nice.
More remote and less crowded.
Well, so to close, we only have like 5 more minutes. Went really fast, but I would love to ask each of you if you have a favorite spot, restaurant, or place in your country that you don't own. So, Andrea, if I could start with you.
That's very easy for me. My experience, rather than a spot, is a day with a private boat, with a captain, of course, sailing the Amalfi Coast, going to a shack on the beach, literally, for an amazing lunch, arriving in Capri around 4 o'clock, just as all of the day visitors are leaving, having a couple of hours in Capri, and of course an aperitivo in the piazzetta, which is fundamental. And then as you return to the Amalfi Coast, you have the sun setting behind you on Capri. That is my incentive when I'm having a big bad day. That is my incentive of getting through the day. I think that has to be one of the most special experiences in the whole of Italy that we sell.
Wow, that's amazing. And I feel like I just took a 30-second vacation to Italy. So. Thank you. Jan, what about you in Brazil?
I'm missing the opportunity to get on a boat as well and to be able to navigate from one of the 365 islands that we have around us. They are wonderful and there is nobody there. Wildlife is coming back very strongly. It's very nice to see, and I think it will be very good for the environment, this lockdown. But I miss to be able to to see them, to see the islands, and it's a very nice place.
Amazing. I went to Brazil. I took my 7-month-old daughter then to Brazil last year, and I just loved it so much. So, Luke, what about you in Africa? Something that you don't own? Oh, sorry.
There's an incredible restaurant called the Chef's Warehouse, which is owned by a man called Liam Tomlin, who is one of the greatest chefs in Africa. And it's high up on a mountain overlooking the vineyards. And it's very close to my office. And we go there every now and then. And the food is just extraordinary. It's all tapas style. Mm-hmm. And whatever's fresh in the market that day, they serve. So it's changing all the time. And it's a high quality experience.
Chef's Warehouse. I hope everyone wrote that down.
The Chef's Warehouse, yes. At Bo Constantia.
Nice. Anthony, what about you in Australia?
Very simple. Again, in the food department, there's a restaurant in Melbourne, Pellegrini Espresso Bar, had the first espresso bar in Melbourne many years ago. It's a pasta bar essentially. They put the pasta in front of you. It's no frills. You can walk out. It costs no more than $30 for dinner. And it's simple and it's beautiful and it's my luxury. So I'm going to go there as soon as it reopens.
I love that. I've been there a few years ago. It's amazing.
Yeah.
James, what about you?
Well, it definitely won't be in Sumba. So let's just start with that.
Okay.
So I think it would be at Ellen's house for dinner. That would be always great. So no, this is what I'd like to be doing tomorrow because we've had so much fun and we haven't done it in a long time. Going for a run with Luke around the reservoir tomorrow morning, like about 6:30 a.m. followed by lunch at Via Quadrono at 73rd between 5th and Madison, vegetable soup half portion, caprese panini, and the best tiramisu. I don't care if you're in Italy or whatever in the world, Via Quadrono, that's where I'm going.
The Upper East Side.
Upper East Side.
I love it.
The best. But
Let's go.
You got to go to the reservoir first. Very important.
Yes.
Can I tell you a quick story about a couple who stayed at James's Nihi?
Yes.
So this couple were there and they order room service, and the lady says to the waiter or the person who answers the phone, I want you to listen very carefully. I'd like toast, but it has to be cooked on the one side, but totally uncooked on the other side. The milk has to be as curdled as possible. The tea has to be as cold as possible. The eggs have to be totally underdone, like almost raw. And the person on the phone says, but ma'am, we can't do this. It's impossible. She said, oh, yes, you can. You did it the last 3 mornings.
You talk such shit, Luke. Okay.
They're old friends, but yeah.
But it's actually a true story, but he's referring to someone at the Carlisle, which was exactly what happened.
Well, it works, right? At the same notion.
Of course, I'm joking. James is my old buddy.
The only difference, it was Sumner Redstone at the other end of the phone, and that wasn't pleasant.
Ellen, I'll throw it to you to close if you want to talk about next week too. And yeah.
Well, as always, this has been such a great conversation, and in these uncertain times, it's so important for us to just keep talking, and we're very grateful for this panel today, and thank you all for joining from different parts of the world. And Annie, we just love having you on the Afar team and really appreciate all these efforts to bring groups of people together each week. And, I think some of the sound bites today, like Jan, trust is something that we've always believed has driven people places. And I know that'll be more important. That word trust is just so important right now. And, the idea of we're all in this together. And my friend Tina Lyra, who happens to be Jan's wife, uses the analogy of in a storm, we don't have all the same boats. And so the stronger boats have to carry some of the smaller boats. And I feel that together as an industry and together with us at Afar, we can get through this and be on the other side in a very successful way. And I'm maybe overly optimistic, but I agree with Andrea too, that this is an opportunity to be more creative, to really reimagine what your own world can be, whether it's personal or professional. And we're looking forward to next week, which will talk more about the future. And we are focused on travel as a force for good next week. And we have Julia Cosgrove, our editor-in-chief, who's going to be with us next week. And if you want to see Julia, she's doing Instagram Live every Friday with some interviews with writers. And last week we made a Bronx cocktail, which was interesting. But, you know, like Andrea said, there are very creative ways to maintain your focus and presence. And I have no doubt that we will all thrive together. So thank you so much. And look forward to seeing you again in person soon.
Yes. Thank you guys
so
again
much, Evan.
so very much.